Okay, we're going to call this to order. This is the Southern Shores Planning Board meeting for February 21st, 2024. Might be here to 2004, but 2024 at 5 p.m. Could we have the stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. I'm sorry, Mr.
All
Vice.
those in favor? I was going to add now, and also I'd like to amend the agenda. I just was notified that we're going to amend the agenda and add VA-2032. It was a variance that was submitted at our last meeting at a public hearing on December 18th, 2023, concerning the property at 17 9th Avenue. Do I have a motion to approve the variance?
So moved.
All those in favor?
It's,
Aye.
this is the written, I'm sorry, to clarify, this is the written decision for the variance that was issued in December.
Yes, it's, okay. Now we have the minutes. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes? Any adjustments? I found on page 6, line 69, a word, the rest of the plan has not changed, submitted all elements. I think we can get rid of the word, U-M. It sounds like what I do all the time, but don't put it in the minutes. So, line 69, does anybody have anything else that they would like to add?
Yeah, I have some edits on page 14, and it's the line 629, the second sentence. There's nothing in the documents beyond that the building lot coverage is at 41,100 square feet total, which should equate to 123,000 square feet of total building area. And then skipping the next sentence and continuing, and I may have to have Wes double check the math, but I think the marketplace has 158,159 square feet per acre. The square footage of this site per acre based on what they have proposed is, it says 17,740, but I don't think that's correct. So, and I just threw away my notes. So it just may be comparing the proposed site plan for the Chingai Creek site floor area per acre to marketplace floor area per acre. And all I did, Wes, was take the information on the Dare County site for the building area and total it up for the marketplace and the assessor's square footage for the acreage too.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there anything else? Could I have a motion for approval of the minutes for November 20th, 2023?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we have public comments, and I do believe somebody did sign up for public comments. State your name and address, please.
Yes, sir. Afternoon, planning board members. Wes, my name is Richard Filling. I live at 131 Crooked Loop. The comments that I have are, of course, in relation or in regard to the new changes that are being proposed. In action item 26-6, let's move from encourage to require. on lot preparation methods. Let's require best management practices. Let's require low environmental impact, and let's require best safety practices. Let's be a little more proactive if we can. I think there's certainly room to be a bit more proactive. On section 36-171, the lot disturbance and stormwater management permit for removal of trees 6 inches with a diameter of 6 inches and a 4.5 foot above grade growth. In lieu of ensuring a permit that would allow a lot to be cleared, let's require site plan review to identify those trees that would be impacted, identify those on the site, and let's only clear those trees that are required relative to what's being developed. What we're seeing, and you must agree with me, that so many lots that are left, they're becoming far and few between. They're just being clear cut. And there's just no need for that. It's not. In section 36-299, appearance of structures in relation to proposed landscaping. It's more of a question, so I apologize for this instead of a comment. Is this amendment a requirement that landscaping be submitted in addition to or identifying or to identify what is to be put on the site development plan? In other words, let's show landscaping in addition to as a requirement on the site development plan. Many developers today are not submitting any type of landscaping. And when we're just clear cutting these lots, then what's left? We have to hope that the new homeowners are coming in and putting in some additional screening, landscaping, and the such. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And there was 2 I know.
My name is Matt Huban. I live at 110 Landing Trail, and I'm the designated representative for Southern Shores Landing. I just want to commend the town staff and the town for being as thorough as they are and coming up and with these changes for this ZTA for the betterment of Southern Shores. And that I want to let you know, I hope you guys unanimously approve this, and everyone in our subdivision is looking forward to seeing this approved. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Okay. Okay. We have no old business. New business. The new business is the ZTA 2401, a zoning text amendment application submitted by the town of Southern Shores to amend the Southern Shores Town Code by amending numerous sections, which we will be going through. And what we'll start to do, and I think, is start looking at the ZTA. I could read it, but it's quite lengthy and we're going to be covering it anyway. So I just think it would be a redundant read to read this unless it's necessary. Is that necessary legally?
I don't think so. No, sir.
Yeah, okay. It would just be a redundant read. So we'll go through the ZTA with what's listed here, okay? And the first section is section 2427, which comes under the code. And what it is, it's amendments. And there are strikeouts throughout the code. And a lot of it is going to have to do, I believe, with 160D. which was voted on by the North Carolina legislature, I believe, in 2019, and changed a lot of the codes for the town. And we are now under 160D rather than 160A. So you're going to see a lot of times some of these things are actually legislated by Raleigh. So there was a strikeout to acquire and maintain in current form basic information and materials that are necessary for understanding of past trends, present conditions, and forces at work. This has been replaced with, I'm going to read the replacement slow, okay? To prepare, review, maintain, monitor, and periodically update and recommend to town council a comprehensive plan and such other plans as deemed appropriate, and conduct ongoing related research, data collection, mapping, and analysis. I think that's quite fast forward. And anybody on the board here that wishes to interrupt or has a statement, please feel free to do it. Then we move down and there's a large strikeout, and then it moves to facilitate and coordinate citizen engagement in participation in the planning process. I think that's been going on. As a matter of fact, it went on tonight. Item 3, to develop and recommend policies, ordinance, and development regulations, administrative procedures, and other means for carrying out plans in a coordinated and efficient manner. That's always the goal, I believe. I don't see any objection to any of that. Number 4, again, there's strikeouts, and we're bringing in compliance with 160D to advise the town council concerning the implementation of plans included but not limited to review and comment on all zoning and text map amendments as required by 160D. We're going to see this over and over, I believe. And Wes, for clarification as we go along, 160D, we're pretty much handcuffed in following exactly what 160D tells us to do, since it's state legislature, right? So I just want to make that clear. We're semi-handcuffed on some things. We can try to see what we can do as we go along. To exercise any functions in the administration and enforcement of various means for carrying out plans that the town council may direct. This is one that I have a hard time with, but to provide a preliminary forum for review of a quasi-judicial decisions, provided that no part of the forum or recommendation may be used on the basis of a deciding board. That almost seems like it's contradictory to
Having a forum.
having it.
Couldn't make heads or tails out of that.
Yeah. I can pick, pardon me?
That's the planning board, not the board of adjustment.
Right, I know. Yeah, I know. So I wanted to put the planning board in there to start out, but I was told that we cannot do that because it's the Board of Adjustment is the quasi-judicial hearing.
Well, except the council is
Right.
for
the planning board.
for discretionary action.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chairperson, if I may, there are a few changes that we'd like to suggest to this language, and this actually is one of them after we discussed it earlier today. We're suggesting that that be revised to provide a preliminary forum for review of special use permits, provided that no part of the forum or recommendation may be used as a basis for the town council. You all do perform the duties of the Board of Adjustment. That's in another section, and there's another part of 160D that says that planning boards or boards of adjustment can make quasi-judicial decisions, and that's in another section of the town code where it addresses that. It's not in here, but I thought it would make it a little bit more clear by saying you all cannot provide a preliminary forum for review of special use permits, and the deciding board is the town council.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
I still don't understand. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I mean, I think that change makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I think in practice, I'm hopeful that, staff is at our meetings and hears the concerns that are raised, by the board and by the public. And hopefully, if there's anything that warrants additional, investigation before it goes to council, that staff would be doing that and that council themselves would be hearing those issues. And I think the whole point is that when it gets in front of council as a quasi judicial hearing, that the facts have to be presented in front of them, and hopefully, anything that's pertinent is going to be raised again.
I think that's it makes more sense. I had a hard time with that when I talked to you about it. It didn't make much sense to me. Do we have any more discussion on that?
Would you read that revised text again?
Yes, sir. To provide a preliminary forum for review of special use permits, provided that no part of the forum or recommendation may be used as a basis for the town council.
What about that? That sounds,
For the town council's decision.
for the town council, so the deciding board.
The deciding board is the town council, so that's
Yeah.
why we're suggesting changing it from deciding board to town council with respect to special use permits.
You got, everybody okay with that, or do you have more discussion? Is the time to do it?
I just don't understand. It sounds like you make all the decisions outside the town, but you can't tell them what you have arrived at.
Well, later on in the language, it gets into what the planning board is reviewing special use permits for, and that's to make a recommendation to the town staff, and then town staff would, as Michael was saying, communicate the concerns and issues that were brought up, that you all bring up. We think that I believe you all are an excellent resource, and you can provide input, and you have insight into things that staff may overlook, or, it's having 8 more sets of eyes is, it never hurts, but you all always provide great input and insight. So I think it's beneficial to keep you all in the process. And as you all would make your recommendation to staff, and we would take that into consideration when we make our recommendation to the town council
Okay.
on special use permits.
So it does-
You all can still have the meetings, you all can still receive public comments. The only difference is you all would be making your recommendation with whether it's approval, disapproval, conditions, you all would be making it to staff, as this is currently written.
Well, and the converse of that is we could come up with something that was completely erroneous, and I would expect that Wes wouldn't carry that forward to council either. So,
Yeah, as I read this, at first it gave me a little pause, but as I've read it over a few times, it's basically saying that the council can't say vote one way or the other just because we did.
right.
They need to come to their own conclusions, and that's what I think this is pointing out.
That's right. And, a main part of this is so that we don't have the potential for legal challenges to the town council's decision, where someone could say that this was the planning board's, this is what they came up with, and the council's basing their decision on that. This is an effort to try to avoid potential legal challenges with respect to the special use permit decisions.
Any more discussion on this issue? The next one is to perform any related duties that a governing board may direct. Is the governing board the council? Would it be easier just to put council?
Yes, sir, we could do that, make that consistent.
Then we have finished the page with strikeouts. And next we go over to Part 2, which is sections 36-171, lot disturbance and stormwater management. And Wes, anytime you want to jump in with the staff report, feel free
Well,
to do that.
yes, sir. Well, right now, I mean, I think going the way you are is fine, and I may interject every now and then, and this is a good spot if you don't mind, 36-171.
Go for it.
After further review and discussion, town staff is withdrawing our proposed amendments to this section at this time. So we're not proposing any amendments right now. You can just omit this from the proposed language at this time, and we will come back to you all with another ZTA that will address tree removal.
Okay. Is that 36-171?
Yes, sir.
Part 2, totally, we're going to,
Part 2 in its entirety, yes, sir.
in its entirety.
We will come back to you all with another ZTA that addresses tree removal.
Can I ask a timeframe when that's expected to happen?
Hopefully the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, we're up to section 36-207, which is general commercial district, and it's permitted uses. And what it is, the uses shall be permitted by right, okay? We have a detached single-family dwellings, two-family duplex dwellings, and accessory buildings, according to the density and dimensional requirements of the RS8 multifamily residential district. Then we have restaurants without a drive-through or with a drive-through facility. The location of the drive-through facility is a minimum of 100 feet from any residentially districts and a minimum of 50 feet from any planned use development. Planned unit development. I'm sorry, planned unit development. Drive-through facility or establishment. And I have a question, what, in parentheses, small, what, could you define small for
Yeah,
us?
the zoning ordinance defines it, I think it's based on the size of the property, I believe. Bear with me one second. Drive-through or facility establishment, small is a customer service facility located on a lot less than 20,000 square feet. So there's a small and then there's a large. Within the principal structure, which serves items over a general service counter for the customer to carry a small seating area to a motor vehicle or off premises.
Okay. Do you think, rather than having small drive-through facility or establishment with less than 20,000 square feet? What I do when I read these, and forgive me, but I look as if somebody comes into your office, picks up and reads it. And rather than trying to figure out what small is, in other words, put small with 20,000, less than 20,000 square feet in the same. It just makes it easier for people reviewing it. And if we're writing it once, why not make it easy for
Be specific.
be specific? Yeah. So when somebody comes in, they pick it up and they say, oh, that's what it means, rather than having small, because I then have to go look someplace. So have it all in one place. Do you think that's a good idea, Wes, or would it be a problem just adding that? Or would it be conflict?
I don't think it would be a problem, but just my opinion is that the way, with most things, it's specific already, I believe, because I know where the definition is.
You do. Yeah. But when somebody comes in to read it, they don't probably.
I don't think it would be wrong to, you asked if it was wrong to change this, then I would just say if you change it here, we would have to change it everywhere else it's referred to.
What do you think, people? Fellow members?
I think for now, I would defer to the definition of the term.
Just leave small? Any other comments?
Yeah, that's not really the meat of what our purpose is tonight.
Right.
I don't disagree with your thinking. But we have,
Okay.
yeah.
Okey
And I
doke.
think if you changed it, you'd have to take all 3 lines, not just the 20,000 feet.
Okay, we will leave it then. The location of the drive-through facility is a minimum of 100 feet from residential districts and a minimum of 50 feet from any planned unit development. 11, mixed-use group development of commercial and residential buildings. No building or other facility such as a parking space, incinerator, trash collection area shall be located nearer than 50 feet to the boundaries of the residential districts or planned unit development. I think we've discussed that before. When a mixed-use group of development abuts a residential district or planned unit development, a buffer of dense vegetation planting or natural vegetation is required. Multifamily dwellings, according to the density and dimensional requirements of RS8 multifamily residential district. Okay, any comments on anything that I have just read?
I
Any
have some,
questions?
Mr. Vice Chairman, unless someone else wants to go first.
Pardon me?
I have some comments, as well as relaying some comments from Chairperson Ward on this part of the ZTA. If you want to hear them now or after you all provide comments, just let
Do
me
we
know.
have anybody providing comments concerning this?
No.
No, go ahead, Wes.
Okay, so this is with respect to Part 3 in its entirety in the ZTA. 36-207 is pages 4, 5, and 6. I'll start with Chairperson Ward has suggested prohibiting marinas by adding the following to estuarine bulkheads in the list of permitted uses in the commercial zoning district in 36-207B9. That's not listed in the ZTA 36-207B9, but I'll show you on the screens what I'm talking about. Schedule of district regulations. So we have 36-207B, which is permitted uses by right. Then if you go down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right now, permitted use by right, estuarine bulkhead must be permitted by all applicable local, state, and federal agencies having jurisdiction. And Chairperson Ward submitted a suggested a revision to that by saying semicolon, however, marinas, parentheses, series of docks and piers, close parentheses, are not permitted uses.
I wouldn't do that because it's spelled out as a permitted use elsewhere in the code, right? So that presumes that we then have to list every use that's prohibited by its omission. So I would not do that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, do you agree with what I'm saying?
I mean, by putting it right there, it does seem a little out of place. And if you all recall, right now, our staff's current interpretation with respect to marinas is that piers and docks are not allowed in the commercial zoning district. Marinas are not listed. Therefore, we consider them to be prohibited. If somebody wants to request them, they have to submit a text amendment application.
But they're explicitly, what I'm saying is they're explicitly listed in other zoning districts.
Marinas,
Correct.
they're actually, that's Mr. Ward, Chairperson Ward brought this up as well. Like you're referring to the SSCA marinas?
I think so.
They're actually not listed in the use table or schedule of district regulation as marinas. They're referred to as community recreation facilities. So quote unquote, marina is not listed as a permitted use.
Do we have But we have a list of prohibited uses townwide, correct?
We do, yeah, that's townwide. Right.
Should it be better off listed there?
That would
Possibly.
actually be the next section, right?
Yeah, possibly. And I'll show you the definition, and again, we're going to definition, of the community recreation facility. It may have the word marina in it, I can't recall. If that's the case, then we will have to come back to this one. Means a recreational facility owned and operated by a not-for-profit entity which is constructed for, open to, and available for use by members, property owners, and their guests.
Do we have a definition for marina at all?
No, sir.
The state of North Carolina does.
No, there's no definition of marina. I don't think it's even in the code, the word marina, since it's not in the community recreation facility definition. Because if you go to the permitted uses and say, let's say RS1, like for the SSCA marina, special use, community recreation facilities, including boat launching areas, tennis courts, community centers, libraries, picnic areas, bathing beaches, and concessions integral there too. We can come back. We can come back to this. We can work on that and come back to you if you all like for right now.
Yeah, and there may be a distinction between a community boat launch and rec facility versus a commercial marina. But then again, maybe there's not either.
Because I think, when I don't know if it's the state definition you're talking about, but I can't recall, but usually you think about ice, gas, beverages, other things being sold at a quote unquote marina. So maybe we can try to find a definition along those lines. And
I think that's a good idea to revisit marinas in general. The state definition that I was referring to had to do with, the minimum was 10
slips.
10 boat slips, and that invoked a type of regulation and inspection and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I actually would like to revisit it because at another time.
Yes, sir. Okay. Also in section 36-207, it addresses setback and buffer requirements for restaurants, drive-through facilities, or establishments, small mixed-use group developments from residential districts, and planned unit developments. And just as a reminder, planned unit development is defined as a tract of land of at least 5 acres in area under single corporate firm, partnership, or association ownership, planned and development as an integral unit in a single development operation or a definitely programmed series of development operations, and according to an approved outline development plan and a preliminary site plan, and which is a departure from the strict requirements relating to lot sizes, setback lines, and yard spaces, but which does not maintain zoning district density requirements. Only residential uses shall be allowed in planned unit developments. So that's just a reminder of what we're talking about when we're referring to planned unit development. Chairperson Ward had another suggestion. He had a few, and this is another one. And I'll just read what he says. I'm still fuzzy on why residential districts is more legally binding than residential use, as it relates to the boundaries and buffers in mixed-use group development and the dimensional requirements in the C General Commercial District. C number 8 under dimensional requirements, it says, where a commercial use or zone abuts. For my point, and this is Chairperson Ward, for my point, why not say residential use or zone? Why not say residential use or zone or planned unit development rather than residential zone or planned unit development? I think of zone and district as being interchangeable in our ordinances. A residential use is just that, the property is being used for residential purposes. It may be splitting hairs and somewhat redundant, but this needs to be bulletproof moving forward. With respect to this comment, town staff suggests keeping using districts throughout these changes in 207 instead of zones, keeping districts. We would have to revise one zone to district because I missed that. And adding residential use or uses. So for example, on page 6, line 19, where a commercial use or district abuts a residential district use or planned unit development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Does that get into any problems if you have a mixed-use site where you may have residential use on the site? Can you imagine that would complicate anything?
So if you had a multifamily building, it would be within that site though.
Well, that's a good point. So let's say, we're talking about the commercial district. Let's say somebody develops the property with a multifamily residential use singularly. The use of that property is now residential, even though it's zoned commercial. And that may create a greater setback from that property, which may or may not be the intent.
It would be when a commercial use or commercial use or district abuts a residential use or district. For a mixed-use group development, I don't know if you could say it's residential or commercial because it's a mixed use.
Well, yeah, remove that, but let's say it's just multifamily.
A multifamily building. I think the intent is to say the surrounding properties, adjacent properties, not the actual use on the same property that it sits on.
Well, no, but imagine, let's say you have a commercial zone property next to a commercial zone property. If they're both developed commercially, there's no additional setback. But if one of them is developed with multifamily singularly,
Then it would have more strict buffer requirements and more strict setback requirements
right,
because
and
it's
I
a
don't
residential
know
use.
if that's the intended outcome. And it would only come up if you put that use in there. It just may be an unintended consequence. So.
Well, I don't think it necessarily, my opinion, I don't think it's an issue to provide an extra buffer or setback between a residential use and a commercial use or zone district. That's just my opinion.
In certain, I can see an unusual circumstance where a variance might be requested and might even be appropriate, with a residential use adjacent.
Isn't in fact, we're very limited on this, that could even occur?
Probably.
It sounds like how many commercial properties and residential properties abut each other at this time?
Vacant properties, we have the property owned by the Stone family behind the Sandy Ridge Center over here.
Yeah.
That's a large piece that abuts residential property. That's zone commercial.
That's zone
And it
commercial.
backs up to the lots on Spindrift and then some of the other lots on
Okay.
Chickahaw.
But that wouldn't change if we added use in there.
I'm sorry?
That wouldn't change the effect of it if we added use, right?
It would be a commercial use abutting a residential use, but it would also be a commercial use
Correct.
abutting a residential district. So it's the same thing.
I'd say I'd be fine if we said residential use district or planned unit development.
Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments on that suggestion?
Nope.
All right, and at the end, I can come back to what we went over for potential revisions for you all to consider.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry, I have a couple more for 36207. I'm sorry. Proposed amendments in this section also remove multifamily dwellings from the list of permitted uses and makes them a special use that meets the density and dimensional requirements of the RS8 multifamily district. In addition to making multifamily dwellings a special use, it removes the potential question about which lot coverage requirement applies to multifamily dwellings, 40% or 30%, and establishes 30%. So right now, if someone wanted to propose a multifamily dwelling on a vacant commercial piece of property, it requires a site plan review by the planning board and the town council. This is a suggestion to make it a special use, just like mixed-use group development. Since it's in more intense use, you would have more abilities, or the town would have more abilities with the conditions associated with a special use permit. And with respect to the lot coverage, I'll show you on the screen what I'm referring to. If you go to 36-207, number 4, right here, detached single-family dwellings, two-family duplex dwellings, multifamily dwellings, and accessory buildings according to the density and dimensional requirements for the RS8 multifamily residential district. But then it says for multifamily dwellings, the lot coverage shall not exceed 40%. So in one place it's saying it's according to the RS8 requirements, but then it says the 40% requirement. So I think there's a potential for a question as to which one applies, 40% or 30%. Because if you go to the RS8 dimensional requirements, the lot coverage is 30%. So I just wanted to bring that to you all's attention and see if you all had any comments or concerns about those amendments.
What's the lot coverage in the commercial district though?
60%.
60%.
And for another lot coverage example, group development is minimum 25%, maximum 40%.
And is lot coverage just building footprint or parking too?
Parking too.
Parking also.
However, the lot coverage for the commercial district can be up to 67% with the use of permeable pavement.
I mean, my suggestion would be that we make the change, but that's something that I think we should revisit as part of the commercial design standards. Because then you end up with, you have a commercial zone property. If you're doing anything but multifamily, you can do 60%, right? But if you're doing multifamily, you can only do 30%.
Currently,
Currently, yeah.
well, there's 30% or 40%, depends on how you interpret it.
Well, 30 or 40 is less than 60.
Correct, yes.
I mean, in some respects, you may end up with a more dense, more developed site than you want because it's not equitable from a development standpoint.
Well, in reference though, you're gonna have more parking because so a lot of that's gonna be taken up with, it's not like the building itself is gonna be more dense because you have to take in consideration parking that goes with it.
Correct, but I think, and that's why I'm saying I think it requires a little bit more evaluation because we need to take a look at it for reasons like that.
I agree with you, Michael.
Yeah.
I would rather see an apartment complex on a commercial property than a sugar kingdom. We're making it pretty prohibitive for a person to develop in that way on their commercial property.
So it sounds like you all want to revisit this.
Yeah.
So you want to just leave multifamily dwellings where it is right now for permitted uses, or you want to move to special uses?
No, I think it should be a special use.
Special use.
Okay,
Yes.
and then, so leave it at the 30% or put it back to 40 or use 40%?
If it were up to me, I'd keep it at 40, but that's not mine. I mean, I don't know what everyone else feels.
If they use permeable, thank you. I'll point to him whenever, whenever I have to say that. Would that raise it to 45%?
Right now, it refers to, it just says in the commercial zoning district, lot coverage can be, that's a good point. That may still apply to multifamily dwellings because it's in,
It's in a commercial.
let's see. Commercial lots shall be allowed. So I think one could make an argument that it could be up to 67% for a multifamily dwelling.
Yeah. Mhm.
So the consensus is move it to special use as proposed and go with the 40%? Yes,
Yes.
yes. And we can, you want to address later on in another ZTA in the commercial design standards, which part about it? I mean,
I think at some point you want to look at, if we're looking at commercial design standards, then what is allowable? What are development options under the commercial zoning relative to all of the uses, to make sure that we're anticipating the outcomes. And allowing, for the development that we would like to see.
so also take into consideration all the uses with respect to
Yeah.
commercial design standards. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Wes, we talk about permeable pavement. What do we have for the life of the permeable pavement or the efficiency of runoff treatment? Because ultimately, it's gonna need some work.
Right. We don't currently have anything about maintenance in the ordinance. It just says that employment of this permeable solution shall be granted the built upon area credit as specified in the NCDENR, now DEQ, Stormwater BMP manual. There isn't anything in there about maintenance.
So is there any monitoring of the effluent leaving the site?
Not from the town.
And so it's basically water/wastewater treatment, stormwater treatment with, at some point, it's a filter. It'll get clogged. It will let it be less efficient. Must be some way that we have to, if it's,
It's runoff or go to a stormwater management basin.
Yeah.
You would have that problem.
Yeah, we discussed this at another time, I thought, a couple years ago, where with that type, that it's not maintained usually.
right?
And I think if I remember correctly, people were talking about cigarette butts filling up the holes, et cetera, et cetera. So there might be, when we do commercial design standards, maybe we could approach it at that time.
Well, as it relates to impermeable surface on a tract of land,
Mhm.
you're basically saying it's gonna do its miracle work
Yeah.
forever
Yeah, and
without
it's,
any monitoring or maintenance.
yeah, it's
So
not.
I don't believe that.
No, it's not. And like I said, we did bring this up a while ago. Could we move on, or is Andy done with his comments?
That's all in this part.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The next one is, we're talking about buffer zones and plan unit development. A buffer of dense vegetation planting or natural vegetation is required. The buffer area will have a minimum width of 20 feet with 2 rows of planting material placed 10 feet on center that a minimum of 5 feet in height when installed and expect to achieve a height of 8 feet within 3 years. Suitable plant types shall be recommended for the coastal area by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which can be expected to reach mature growth of 8 to 10 feet. And vegetation plan is to be approved by town council. I also thought that the plants should be maintained by the developer and replaced within 60 days or appropriate planting season if they start dying. In other words, you could plant it and then say, see ya, and everything starts dying. And I think somehow we should have in there that they're responsible for maintaining that survivability, yeah, of those plants.
This is in number 8,
Number 8, yeah,
so you would want to add that
plants maintained by developer.
plants or buffers shall be.
Buffer, yeah,
buffers-
buffers are better. Yeah, buffer maintained by developer and replaced if, something dies, replaced within 60 days or the appropriate planting season.
So buffers shall be maintained by the developer or owner, property owner.
Yeah.
Then what was the last part? I'm sorry.
And replaced within 60 days or appropriate planting season. Or you could just have replaced on the appropriate planting season, because you're not going to plant something in November, maybe,
You gotta put the word in there, dead vegetation.
Dead vegetation, yeah. That's good.
Dead vegetation shall be maintained by the
Mhm.
property owner and replaced.
Mhm.
Is that what you were saying?
It would be replaced and then maintained. In other ways, dead vegetation after 60 days of completion of project would be replaced and then maintained. I guess you're referring to the vegetation that was in front of Lowe's for so long it died.
No, it's generally, that's a common occurrence. They plant and then there's no watering, no maintenance, and they die.
So buffers shall be maintained by the property owner. Dead vegetation shall be replaced during the appropriate planting season.
Yes.
You want your days in there, your 60 days after.
No, appropriate season is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We're up to 30. Any comments on that from anyone? 36209, prohibited uses in all districts. And what we have is added, we have miniature golf courses, not tattoo, warehouses and wind farms. Did I miss one?
Storage units.
And storage unit. Yeah, and storage unit. They were added. Could marinas be placed in there and save?
But I think the concern about that is, do we want to exclude them from all districts?
Yeah.
And we need to look into
Okay.
community recreation facility and boat launching areas and making sure that we're not causing any issues there. I do have, if y'all don't have any comments on this, I have one. One of the current prohibited uses is smoke and vapor shops.
Mhm.
But in the current list of permitted uses, the retail sale of tobacco. Retail sale of tobacco products is a permitted use. So we recommend deleting tobacco products from that section to be consistent with the list of prohibited uses.
I think there's a distinction there, though, between the retail sale of tobacco that may be incidental to a retail store versus a smoke and vapor shop
Vape,
where that's
yeah.
the predominant use.
Yeah, if you put tobacco products, Food Line, I think, sells tobacco products. I know CVS doesn't any longer, apparently. I think what he was saying about smoke and vapor shops, which is number 401.
Yeah, are those defined?
No.
In other words, a shop that its retail is specifically that product,
Right.
where Food Line is, which sells stuff, that's not their product. That's
That makes sense. I see what you're saying.
yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. We're down to part 5, 36-297, building and zoning permits required time limitation for site plans and zoning permits. What has been underlined and underscored to go through this is permits to commence and continue. The word "and" has been added, A and D. And if required, in number 2, if required by town council, the building inspector and zoning administrator may issue a building permit and zoning permit within, instead of 180 days, 1 year from the date of such approval. Again, we're going to go to 1 year. If a building permit and zoning permit are not issued within 1 year from the date of final approval of the site plan expires. And the applicant must submit a new site plan, and they start the process again, basically. Any problems with any of that? And then we go down to time limitations to commence and continue in construction. You have 180 days from the date of the issuance of a building permit. If after the commencement, work is discontinued for a period of 1 year, the building permit, zoning permit, and site plan shall expire immediately. And again, they'll have to go through the process again. And that's changed from what was initially 180 days on some of these.
These are all updates for 160D, right?
Yeah, use 160Ds. Permit choice. This is added. If an application made in accordance with approved regulation is submitted for a development approval required to this chapter, and a development regulation changes between the time of application was submitted and the decision is made, the applicant may choose which version of the development regulation will apply to the application. If the development permit applicant chooses the version or rule or ordinance applicable at the time of the permit application, they can use that. Otherwise, they could use the new one. It's basically, if something happens where they applied and things changed, they have their choice of which one they want to utilize.
Which we have been doing, is just putting it in.
It's just putting it in writing, yeah. And then next we have part 6. Wes, was that permit choice also D also?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I figured. 36-299, application for building permits, zoning permits, and site plan requirements. And this is property and ownership information, present recorded owner and map. And if you go down, iron pins 3/8 of 1 inch diameter and 36 inches in length shall be shown and installed at all lot corners, points, and tangents at any angle point given the course of the lot. And I'm assuming this is the result of a survey that would be in hand.
Which section are you referring? Which?
I'm sorry, Wes, number 6. We were
Page 10.
page 10, number 6.
Well, those are existing.
Yeah, that's existing. We're not proposing any changes there.
Okay. Site improvements show, we're down to C because nothing's changed there and it's pretty much, you can't do much. Site improvements show all proposed site improvements included but not limited to anticipated final appearance in the front, which is added, sides, rear, which was added, and roof lines of proposed structures shown in the site plan. Proposed building type and material, that is steel, brick, concrete, or wood frame, number of floors and dimensions.
Can I comment on number 1?
Yeah, absolutely. Interrupt anytime, please.
What I would suggest is that number 1 read proposed to scale architectural elevations of the front, sides, rear, and roof lines of the proposed structures shown on the site plan.
Proposed to scale architectural elevations
Mhm.
of the front, sides, rear, and roof lines of the proposed structures on the site plan.
Mhm.
Instead of anticipated final appearance of.
Yeah.
Everyone agree?
Yes. I also mentioned, I talked to Mike before the meeting. I don't know what he brought up at that last, when we were at the last meeting, when we were going over things. He came up with a building volume and density aspect. Now, I don't know whether that would be here or perhaps in the, when we redo commercial, as far as what is needed there. But I thought that was an interesting statistic that was given, that a proposed plan and was larger than Food Line, the whole project of Food Line, or the whole Southern Shores. And if you're looking at large, at a development, I think the building volume and density on commercial would be a good thing to have. And something that they could submit on a commercial. What is the building volume and density?
Yeah, I mean, Tony and I talked about this a little bit before. I think, they give you they're required to provide all the information that you would be able to use to derive that. And I guess the question is that something we want to track and make sure that people are providing? I don't know. But it also makes me think, I'm used to also seeing a requirement for an applicant to provide a project narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, that's something that could be required. But if we're thinking about, I think what I would like to see is some, and again, maybe as the commercial design standards, some eventual scale of appropriateness in terms of the volume and FAR, floor area ratio, some evaluation of what the existing development is in town so that we can understand what's too big beyond what we have. So I don't know if you would list it here.
Either here or commercial design standards, if you think that's a more appropriate place for it. Does anybody have a,
I think it's an important topic to take up when we do discuss commercial design standards.
design standards? Okay. So we'll leave that and then plug that into commercial design standards and discuss it at that point.
Although maybe you do want to put, was there something in here? All right, so you've got maybe number 21, where you have
21.
proposed number of bedrooms and occupants. Maybe what you say is residential density expressed as proposed number of bedrooms and or occupants, and then per acre or per square foot or something like that. And then, you know, similarly, that you would want some expression of commercial density.
Yeah, I think if you asked the number of bedrooms and or occupants, that's really a floating item. You know, people put down, they have a 7-bedroom house, and then they have a office, and then they have a studio, so I think it's good that we have that, the proposed number of bedrooms and occupants. But I think the volume aspect would be something in the future to discuss on commercial.
At the site plan stage, I think we haven't necessarily required the number of bedrooms. I think this is something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that it's here.
Yeah.
It may not be quite enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and what we're talking about, there's 20 and 21 are new items added. A rendering showing the anticipated front, sides, and rear appearance of the structure relative to the proposed landscaping, which is back to the proposed to scale architectural final appearance.
Mhm.
And then the other is the proposed number of bedrooms and or occupants. Any discussion on either of those two additions? Should we have a rendering showing the anticipated front? Should we put down a architectural rendering as we had earlier?
I think this is,
Is more
it's
fluid?
different, but I do wonder, I want to make sure it's clear what the expectation is, what the difference is there between that and number 1. And this comes about because, you know, you do have under 1, at present, you have plus a rendering showing the anticipated front appearance.
This one adds the landscaping.
This one adds the landscape.
Well, but that's there too, relative to landscaping, but I think,
They crossed it out.
yeah, I think I just want to be clear. I don't know if you want to put a 3D rendering or a dimensional rendering showing the anticipated front or proposed front, sides, and rear appearance of the structure relative to, I think what you want to say is relative to views from abutting properties.
Adjacent.
Adjacent.
Relative to the context of adjacent properties.
Yeah.
Because
And if we keep landscaping in there, it should be existing vegetation to be retained and proposed landscaping, something. I know it gets a little wordy, but
So I'll take a shot. A 3D rendering? Do you think, I mean, just,
never mind.
do you
Just say
think that's too
rendering.
much?
You say rendering.
Yeah.
A rendering showing the anticipated or proposed
Mhm.
front, sides, and rear appearances of the structure relative to proposed landscaping and adjacent properties?
The views from adjacent properties and reflecting proposed landscaping and other site elements.
Relative to the views from adjacent properties? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then what was the last part? I'm sorry.
And
Read back what you wrote, Wes, I think.
A rendering showing the proposed front, sides, and rear appearances of the structure relative to the views from adjacent properties and it was landscaping.
incorporating retained vegetation, proposed landscaping, and other site elements.
From adjacent properties, comma, retained vegetation,
Including retained vegetation and proposed landscaping and other site elements.
just a question, site element, would that be parking lot, fire hydrant,
Could be
dumpster?
lights, dumpster. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, so pretty much anything. They have to show, yes, okay.
What's that really doing is just expanding on what we talked about earlier about the 20-foot. The buffer area shall have a minimum width of 20 feet and 2 rows of planting material required. And we could put on that just a rendering of what it may be. In other words, it's almost redundant, except this is asking for a rendering.
But it also states about vegetation that's left in place. I mean, I think that incorporates our, 6-inch tree size that needs to be left versus clear line. So.
Yeah, that was covered in what we struck. 36-171 had a lot of that information in it, but we struck that and we're going to revisit that. That had some of the information we're talking about, tree size and what can be cut and what can't be cut.
And should we say structures instead of structure, since in case there's more than one structure involved?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you say a rendering showing the front, sides, and rear appearances of the proposed structures.
Yes. Good, thank you.
Okay. Moving along, the next thing is the wastewater aspect of this. And I'm going to read the new items added for improvements that require a new wastewater treatment facility or connection to the existing wastewater treatment facility. Documentation from North Carolina Utilities Commission certifying that the owner of the wastewater treatment facility is an approved public utility and the franchise holder must be submitted with the site plan application. The other one is number 2I, for improvement that require connection to an existing wastewater treatment facility. Documentation from North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality certifying the wastewater treatment facility is in compliance with the applicable requirements must be submitted with the site plan application, including adherence to permit conditions issued by North Carolina.
And along that line, I'd like to see on page 11, number 5, which says proposed method of treating wastewater, location of wastewater, that be the same on page 13 where it says G, septic tank or wastewater treatment approval. I think we need to be specific versus just saying appropriate permitting agencies. I'd like to be consistent from what we've learned to kind of incorporate that we want the name of the regulatory agency and approved wastewater, name of the written approval connection and all of that at time of issuing building permit and stuff. In other words, don't be too late, but be on top of it. Does that make sense?
So you want to make that change to number 5 on page 11, is that what you said?
Take the verbiage that's on 5,
Mm-hmm.
page 11, and incorporate that into 6G on page 13. In other words, we'll be consistent that we want all this info up front.
Up front.
So keep the language in number 5 on page 11, but also put it on page 13
Under G,
under G.
yes.
So at
please.
the end of that sentence in G, add number 5 from page 11.
Yeah, or if you figure out how to word it so it means the same.
Does everyone agree? You want to-
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, moving along.
I do have, one second, I do have
Okay.
another comment from Chairperson Ward on one of these. Okay, this comment is on, with respect to little I, on line 6, page 12. In the ZTA, page 12, line 6 through 10 regarding wastewater treatment plant language, I would suggest a slight modification starting with line 9 to read, the wastewater treatment facility is an approved public utility, is the utility franchise holder, and is the permit holder issued by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. All documentation, blah, 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 blah. So altogether, it would read, for improvements that require a new wastewater treatment facility or connection to an existing wastewater treatment facility, documentation from the North Carolina Utilities Commission certifying that the owner of the wastewater treatment facility is an approved public utility, is the utility franchise holder, and is the permit holder issued by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. All documentation of these requirements shall be submitted with the site plan application. Any objections or comments on that?
Would there ever be any reason why they would be different?
I can't foresee it, but I don't know if it's possible or not.
Yeah, it could be possible. Yeah, it could be possible. At some point, it could be possible.
But I think his intent is to make sure that they're all the same.
Yeah. Okay, we're down to,
Do y'all, I'm sorry, do y'all want to?
oh, yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Make those changes or?
Yeah, I think what it does, it just solidifies and makes it clearer for anybody making a judgment on it.
Okay.
It was kind of skeptical.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I don't really have I don't have a problem with including that language here. I'm not sure that the town of Southern Shores has the authority to require that. If the North Carolina Utilities Commission and Department of Environmental Quality don't require it. But I don't have a problem with trying.
Well, if this site is sold at some point in the future, do we lose track of who's responsible
Which
in the town documents?
this could be for any commercial site with a wastewater treatment plant. We're not talking about just one site.
Right.
Do you know if, it doesn't matter. Never.
Okay.
Anyway, it sounds to me like the state of North Carolina allows for those, for the ownership of those different things to be different people. So, but I don't have I don't have a problem with having it in our ordinance.
That was kind of where I was
Trying.
coming from. Can we mandate it?
Probably, maybe not, but I think we should try.
Well, for what it's worth, the town attorney did review this document before it was sent to you all. They have not seen the revised language,
Okay,
but they did see what was there initially.
okay.
But they're going to review it again. Whatever changes you all recommend tonight, they're obviously going to review it again. So I'll make sure that they pay attention to that as well.
That'd be great.
But for now, we'll recommend that these changes be made.
Application for a permit of special uses. What has been added, written application for a special use permit shall be submitted to the Planning and Code Enforcement Department, not the board, not the planning board. No application shall be deemed complete unless it is accompanied by a site plan drawn to scale which complies with the site plan requirements contained in section 36-299. Then we have a lot of strikes. Are these strikes the result again of the code change, 106, 160D?
Yes, sir. A lot of it is it's taking it takes some of what we have and reorganizes it and makes it in chronological order.
Yeah.
And it also incorporates language taken directly from 160D.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, and here we have, I will read from 160, it's basically the town planning board shall review the application for a special use permit and recommend approval, conditional approval, or rejection of the application. The board shall submit its recommendation as to approval or disapproval, along with such conditions as it may deem necessary to this town staff. Then we have the town council shall hold an evidentiary hearing and town we'll say town staff, shall give written notice, including the date and time of the evidentiary hearing at which the application will be considered to the owners contained in said listing. Written notice shall also be given to the person or entity whose application is the subject of the hearing and to the owner of the property that is subject of the hearing if the owner did not initiate the hearing. Notice shall be sent by certified mail. This is basically what's been going on now, to the last address, etc. Notice shall be given at least 10 days in advance of such evidentiary hearing by legal advertisement placed in a newspaper. Notice of these hearings shall be posted on the property concerning at least 10 days prior. It's just pretty much what is going on now, basically.
Yeah, it's taking what we had and it's putting it in, it's reorganized.
Reorganizing it, yeah. And then again, we have a lot of strikes. And then we have, in instances where a property owner seeks to obtain a vested right pursuant to section 36304, a public hearing shall be held by town council. Town staff shall give written notice by certified mail, including the date and time of the public hearing to the owner of the property or his agent, which has the vested right is sought. Notice shall be given at least 10 days in advance of such public hearing by legal advertisement. Again, Wes, I talked to you earlier. For some people, if they're streaming and all, could you explain vested right?
Yes, sir. So it's the change that we have in the next part of the ZTA.
Right.
It deletes what we have for vested rights now and replaces it verbatim, almost verbatim, with what's in 160D, which replaces, it refers to a site-specific vesting plan. And that consists of a plan submitted to the town in which the applicant requests vesting pursuant to that section, describing with reasonable certainty on the plan the type and intensity of use for a specific parcel or parcels of property. The plan may be in the form of, but not limited to, any of the following plans or approvals: a planned unit development, a subdivision plat, or a special use permit. Unless otherwise expressly provided by the town, the plan shall at a minimum meet the requirements of a site plan set forth in section 36-299. A vested right, and I'm kind of summarizing what's in that language.
Yeah.
A vested right is established with respect to any property upon the valid approval or conditional approval of a site-specific vesting plan as provided in the section. Such a vested right confers upon the landowner the right to undertake and complete the development and use of the property under the terms and conditions of the site-specific vesting plan, including any amendments thereto. Site-specific vesting plans run with the land and can be approved for a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 5 years.
Okay. Thank you. I just thought, if people are streaming, they might want to know what a vested right is, and kind of helps. We're up to page 16, and this again is added, and it's any person may appear in person or by agent or attorney. The zoning administrator shall transmit to the town council all applications, report, written materials. The administrative materials may be distributed to members of the town council. This is basically what, in a way, what goes on now. The administrative material may be provided in written or electronic form. The administration materials shall become part of the hearing record. Objections to inclusion or exclusion of administrative materials to the hearing record may be made before or during the hearing. Rulings on unresolved objections shall be made by town council at the hearing. The applicant and any person standing shall have the right to participate. This is basically a hearing, sworn-in hearing. And it has here that the mayor or the town clerk may swear in the individuals. And it's basically a hearing where information, people are sworn in. The town council holds the hearing. The mayor is running the hearing to some degree, or is the person that listens for objections, makes rulings on them, or if the person appeals it, it goes to the town council, total town council for a decision. Do you think we have to go over these 5 pages when in effect, it's just talking about a hearing?
It's the procedure.
It's the procedure of the hearing,
for
yeah.
Special use permits, subpoenas, continuances, that's new, and that comes from 160D. The rest of it is pretty much what we already had in
Right.
place. It's just a reorganization of it. And I didn't have any comments or for any further comments or suggested revisions since you all received it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's new is that special use permits, they have to be recorded by the applicant at the
Yes.
county registry, so it runs with the property.
Yeah, that's the two things I noticed, that they have to do that, and also the use of subpoenas. I've never seen that done here
Yeah,
before.
and this also clarifies that, a concern that came up in the previous special use permit application, that site plan should be submitted with the zoning, with the special use permit application, accompanying site plan.
Has everybody read? I've gone over it. It's pretty much what was going on, except for the subpoenas, except for the mayor now handling objections.
Continuances, subpoenas.
Yeah.
Recording, accompanying site
Yeah,
plan.
and the person that submits has to record now over in Mania.
If you
Okay,
couldn't tell, land use attorneys were heavily involved in writing 160D.
really?
No,
You're kidding? Were you really?
yeah,
A Southern Shores resident had a heavy hand in a lot of it.
I knew that too.
Yeah. Yep. Then we have page upon page of strike. And then we're up to vested rights. And that's the last section, basically, is the vested rights section. And Wes did go over this briefly and
I read the parts.
that are pertinent.
Yes, yes, sir. I mean, it's pretty much minus 2 or 3 sentences that the town attorney suggested removing. It's verbatim from 160D.
Yeah.
And it deletes our current vested rights language and replaces it with what it says in 160D.
Does anybody have any questions concerning vested rights? It is 160D. We're kind of semi-handcuffed on this. Does anybody have any concerns over vested rights and how it's written? All right.
There was a comment earlier made about the recording of our findings.
Recording of the special use permit, the actual document.
So is that a vested right then?
It depends on if they request they can request a vested right for special use permit.
So that could go with the land from 2 to 5 years. Just recording a special use permit, does that allow them, does that go with the land?
Yes, once a special use permit is issued and it's recorded, it runs with the land.
For 2 to 5 years?
If they request a vested right.
Well, if you get the use permit and then you enact it, you affect it, then it runs with the land.
You get the special use permit and you don't do any construction, then it will expire. Does it not?
Yes.
It would, yes.
Yeah. That's
So recording it doesn't extend the life of that special use permit unless they request it as a vested right to go with the land. So they could sell it to somebody else.
But then it only goes for up to 5 years.
5 years.
2
Okay.
to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other further discussion? No further discussion? Okay, I think we pretty much went through it. There's a couple things that we skimmed through, but they were 160D, and many of the things pretty much stayed the same. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to or any input concerning ZTA 24-01? Okay, do I have a motion?
If I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chairperson.
Yeah.
I just wanted to state that the town staff has found that these proposed amendments are consistent with the town's currently adopted land use plan. The findings in this ZTA on pages 1 and 2 address land use plan consistency and the policies and action items in it. We recommend approval we recommend that you all recommend approval to the town council. And I have written down the changes that you all have agreed to, and I can go through those before you all vote, or I don't have to. It's up to you all.
I think before we vote, it's best to do a quick refreshment of what the changes are.
Okay. We're going to revise section 24-27, part 1, the planning board duties to provide a preliminary form for review of special use permits, provided that no part of the form or recommendation may be used as a basis for the town council. Part 2, 36-171, town staff withdrew the proposed amendments. In that section 36-171, we're going to come back to you all with another ZTA, so please keep that in mind. If you all are recommending approval to the town council, just keep in mind that 171 is not included.
Wes, there was also number 7 on page 3, changing governing board to town council.
Yes, sir. Correct. Thank you. Thank you. I had that starred in my document, in the ZTA document, but not in my revisions. Okay. Marinas, we're going to revisit that. We are going to add residential districts and residential use or uses throughout 36-207, where it talks about the buffers and buffer and setback requirements. In part 6, 36-299, this is the improvements that require a new wastewater treatment facility or existing wastewater treatment facility connection. We're revising, so it says that the wastewater treatment facility is an approved public utility, is the utility franchise holder, and is the permit holder issued by NCDEQ. I did have page 3, town council from governing board. Page 6, multifamily dwellings, lot coverage is going to be set at 40%, and it will be made a special use. We're going to revisit the list of permitted uses during our commercial design standard consideration. Page 6, buffers we're going to make a revision, says buffers shall be maintained by the property owner. Dead vegetation shall be replaced during the appropriate planting season. Page 10, number, I believe it's 1. Oh yeah, number 1 and C. Proposed to scale architectural elevations of the front, sides, and rear of roof lines. Also, page 10, we're going to revisit floor to area ratio in commercial design standards. Page 11, a rendering showing the proposed front, sides, and rear appearances of the structures relative to the views from adjacent properties, including retained vegetation, proposed landscaping, and other site elements. Page 12, we are going to take language from number 5 on page 11 and,
No, not on 12, on 13.
I'm sorry, move to 13.
Yeah.
Page 12, we're going to add the language I just referred to from Chairperson Nord. Sorry to belabor this, but I just want to make sure I have everything that y'all.
No, I think, okay. That is ZTA 2401. Do I have a motion to adopt ZTA 2401 with the proposed changes and forward them to council?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, and just a suggested friendly amendment based on the findings that the proposed amendments are consistent with the land use plan policies and action items as listed.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We now have our public comment.
Well, we have the decision on the zoning variance.
I thought we,
Yeah, I think y'all, it was a little bit out of order, but I think y'all did take a vote
We-
on
we
that
did.
earlier.
Did we just vote on that?
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought we just added it.
if you change your mind, we can vote again.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, we have public comment. I believe, I know we have one.
That discharge of service.
Paul Watson, Sassafras Lane. I've got a few things. As far as the permit for removing trees under any circumstance, I think the town should stay away from. There's many features that can be wrong with the tree, i.e. insects, wind damage, soil disturbance, all such things affect trees. It's nice to save trees, of course, but sometimes you just can't, especially when we're in a, day of age that most of the trees in this town are 60 to 80 years old. So if we keep that in mind, I would say that if you try to make like heritage trees, that somebody be able to prove it with pictures, because there are people that have lived here that long that have pictures of the area. All right, with that out of the way, and I own my own tree company, just to let you know. I've been doing this 20 years in this town, so I speak from experience. As far as the marinas go, I would suggest that the council, what's the word I'm looking for? Grandfather the existing marinas for particular reasons. The other, making a new marina also comes under CAMA's auspice. They can say, yes, no, this is what it has to be made out of. This is the occupancy. It has to be ADA approved, all that. That's with CAMA. I would also implore, if they did do anything with that, that you look at stand-up paddle boards, kayaks being launched out of such facilities, because that can be a hazard to boating, because there is a ski course at the end of the creek. As far as the money for the wastewater treatment plant, under the Utility Commission, they have to have a certain amount of funds retained to take care of the wastewater utility. I just want to put that out there. That might be an interesting one to think about. Also, vegetative management plan for that end of Gengite. Since we really don't burn the marsh anymore, I'd like to know what we're going to do. We're going to go in there with Marsh Masters, which is basically a bush hog that floats. It looks like a giant tank. The Forest Service has those for putting out wildland firefighting, but they can also take down the old reeds in the marsh to lessen the fuel load. So if there is ever a fire there, because that fire would be very large, it would take up most of Gengite Creek Road, I believe. Water runoff quality check. Since a lot of the homes are on canals or canal adjacent, most of the water runoff goes into the canals. Are we checking, on an annual basis, or how are we getting water quality checks out of the canals to see if there's anything, bad in there? Because by the state, it's considered toxic runoff if it comes off a road. But it usually comes off a road, hits the sand, filters, then drops into the canal. I would just like to see what's happening there. And as far as the mayor meetings go, as far as I understand, it's still, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wes, it's still council manager, correct? Way of government? Okay. So an individual can basically stand before you and present something, and y'all can vote on it directly or indirectly, or table it, or however. So I learned that this is 20 years ago when Ike told me how the government worked in this building. So that's quite some time. But that's all I have for you guys. And hopefully that gives you some insight into certain things.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, planning board member comments. We'll start this end.
No comments?
I would like to see some water quality tests done. I don't know how we initiate that, but I would like to see, that's come up a couple times, and I think we need to put that into some type of plan, being the planning board.
Okay. It has been brought up multiple times.
It has, and we haven't done anything. So the question is, where do we go with that, Wes, to initiate?
It's in the land use plan.
That's what I was about to say. We
Yep.
put that in the land use.
Yeah.
plan.
It's in the current draft of the land use plan.
That we're waiting.
What do we do?
What's that?
What do we do with it? With
Yeah.
that desire?
Well, that's one of the, yeah. Do you have any comments?
Just want to remind people that the council meeting on March the 12th, there will be a presentation by the contractor who's replacing the Trinity Trail culvert. And the culvert, that height will be reduced a little bit to try to make that road a little flatter and maybe a little safer. And so anyone who's interested in that issue should show up March the 12th.
Okay.
What meeting?
It's the town council meeting.
Okay, my only comment is, Andy, I know you're watching. Enjoy your new grandchild. Announcements.
The next meeting is scheduled, regular meeting is scheduled for March 18th. At that meeting, you all may be reviewing, considering tree removal, commercial design standards, and lot width. Also, with respect to the land use plan, since that just came up, DCM they told us that they have deemed the document complete. They completed their completeness review, and it has been forwarded to other agencies for comment and other jurisdiction surrounding adjacent jurisdictions for comments. And I think that window's open until mid to late March. So after we receive those comments, we'll see if we have to address any. So we're maybe looking at an adoption in April.
Okay.
Maybe at the fastest pace that it could occur. That's when it would be, I think.
Okay. I know this is your favorite part. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I make a motion to adjourn.
Good for you.
Did you, I have a second or a third and a fourth?
Yes.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you for coming, everybody out there. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time and effort as always.
Thank you.